Welcome everyone to this Let's Play of Kerbal Space Program First Contract. This is episode 32. It is year 1, day 98. And we are finally going to be meeting our maker. Or as they say, meeting an asteroid. Now we have 28 seconds until the first of our 3 asteroids arrives in our sphere of influence. And I don't think it's going to take 3. I certainly hope it's not going to take 3. So this is a momentous day. We have not left the sphere of influence of Kerbin. Everything has come to us. And so today we are going to capture our first asteroid. Now we have a contract for that asteroid. So let's get going and fulfill it. 3, 2, 1, let's go! So this is our asteroid, our Class C asteroid, hurtling towards us at a significant meters per second, 433.7 meters per second. It's a Class C. It meets the requirements for our base that we have to form around momentous for our contract. So let's head over to the asteroid hunter and hunt this thing down. I'll see you in a moment. Well, here we are with Bill, Jeb and Bob, fresh underpants attired, if that's a word, ready to capture our asteroid. So let's go to the map view and we can see our asteroid here hurtling in 84 million meters. So let's get on and intercept our asteroid. Now you will notice we are not exactly in the plane of our asteroid, so we will need our 2 maneuver node system in order to capture our asteroid, just as if we were going to momentous. So let's begin with our first maneuver and just get out roughly to the orbit of our asteroid. So let's just pull on the prograde marker. Now you will have seen this additional window appear. This is the precise node computer, which will help us make very fine adjustments should we need it. And I thought that would be a handy addition to our toolbox. Now here we go. We are well above the orbit of our asteroid. Well above. So we are going to need our second node. So let's add our second node and pull ourselves down towards the orbit. And you can see the encounter markers getting a little bit closer as we do so. Right, so we're obviously arriving way too early, way up here. So let's start making some adjustments, beginning with our initial trajectory. Now, we can just about get these things into view. Let's grab our node and bring these two back together. Now, we've lost our encounter because we're now probably a long way below, or in this case above, so let's make further adjustments as they come together. So let's grab this node again, bring it around, and continue to make incremental adjustments to both of these nodes. Now we're getting pretty close now, pretty close. And I think we've now just overshot a little. So we're going to have to pull ourselves back. And this, I think, is where precise node is going to start coming in pretty handy. So let's bring ourselves back a little. Go over to our other node as we start making smaller and smaller adjustments. Right, so let's see, how close are we now? We seem to have 2, so we have what's that? Separation 761. Now we can adjust either node 1 or node 2. So let's adjust node 2 and see if adjusting our launch window by just incrementing or decrementing time, which is left or right button, by these amounts gets us closer or further away. So let's click here. Let's see which way are we going here. 7, that's going worse. So let's right click to go minus and bring ourselves back. 652, that's a little better. 602. 520, this is looking good. 391. 298. Now you can see we are slightly above and behind. This is where we're going to be. So now let's look at adjusting this a little down. So let's add 1. That's too much. Wrong way. So let's go back a little. So it looks like we're now on plane, but a little bit behind. 322. So now it's a case of continuing to adjust. So let's adjust our launch window forward just a little. $331, 317, 340. Now to be fair, we have no mech Jeb to help us with these maneuvers. So I suspect we are going to have to do multiple adjustments. And adjustments. And more adjustments. So let's get ready. We have 901 meters per second for our first maneuver. So let's get ready for that maneuver. Let's just rotate round. Maneuver node is over here. Here we go. Now, we haven't fired our nuclear engines for a while, so it hasn't been able to estimate how long this burn is going to be. So we're going to have to guess at about, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. Let's come out of map mode. Get our guys ready. We'll switch off the lights. We don't need the lights. We are now in sunlight, though we will keep an eye on our resources. So we have maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes of burn to do. We have full fuel tanks, although I am a bit concerned a fault may have developed in these fuel lines. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. But let's get ready. Let's get round to about 2 minutes to go, and then fire our engines and see how long it's going to take us to burn off 911 Delta V. So 5 minutes to go. Let's move forward a little faster with the miracle that is time warp. So 2 minutes to go. So let's just see if I go maximum 2 minutes 47. Well, that's not too bad. That is not too bad. Pretty good guess in my opinion, and we'll be able to make lots more adjustments as we go. So let us keep our fingers crossed. Now, as you can see, these tanks aren't refilling from the center, so this fault has indeed developed with these fuel lines. The fuel lines are pointing in the right direction, but there seems to have been a mechanical fault on each of these lines. Jeb is going to have to go back to the workshop and give those guys a piece of his mind. Never mind, we will sort that out. There are ways of overcoming this problem. So we are still on node. 630 meters per second of Delta V to go. If we don't quite make it, we'll have to refill the out of tanks manually and then continue with executing the node. Bill, Jeb and Bob look happy enough with the maneuver as it's being executed, so good for them. Let us check their life support. They have plenty of life support remaining. Electricity is perhaps the one thing we will have to keep an eye on if we ever get onto the dark side of the planet. But 940 days of snacks should be plenty. And you can see that same amount represented here in the resource list. So plenty of oxygen, water and food, and only a small amount of waste so far accumulated. Now, this is what we're going to run out first. These tanks, I think, are not quite going to have enough fuel to burn all of this Delta V. We're not going to be far off, but we're not going to be perfect. Let's just keep on node for as long as possible. We're going to be maybe 100 Delta V short before we have to refill the tanks. So coming down to maybe 200 Delta V short. There we go. So let's kill the thrust and then manually alt-click and fill the tanks. This is going to take a couple of minutes. These small outer fuel tanks take 90 liquid fuel, as you can see. That's filling up pretty sharpish. We're going to have to fill all 4 before we can resume the manoeuvre. If we don't, we'll be spinning off track. Even this mighty wheel in here won't be able to keep us lined up. So that's the first tank done. So let's repeat for this second tank. Alt-click and in. So let's fill this tank. Now these nuclear engines are a heck of a lot more efficient than this main engine, so we'll see whether we really need to use that main engine when it comes to redirecting the asteroid itself. But one thing at a time. We've got to actually get to the asteroid first. So that's the second tank filled. Let's alt-click and do the third tank. There we are, see it filling over here. Bill, Jeb and Bob seem content to wait out this little manoeuvre. Third tank almost full. There we go. And then the final tank here on the dark side. Oh look, there's the Mun. Let's just get in there, get the right thing. Click out of the way. Tank and tank in. So there we go, last tank being filled. Yes, there we can see the Mun with its enormous crater there, staring at us, watching as we go by. So halfway through filling this last tank. Almost done. There we go. Right, let's continue with the remainder of this burn. So 150 meters per second to go. Keep it lined up. 100 meters per second to go. 80. Let's just reduce the thrust a little and get down to 40. Reduce the thrust a little more. Make it a little easier to control. So we're at 25. 14, 13. Go. Within tolerance. 3. And we'll cut the engines there with 7 to go. So let's go back to map mode and see how well we did. Not so well. Not so well. Which is why we have more nodes. So let us rinse and repeat. Let's get down to inline. Now we're a little bit short. No, we're a little bit long. Let's pull back. Now we're a long way out on our intersect. We're getting there way too early. So we are going to have to redirect which way. Let's have a look. This way. And bring ourselves back together. Right, so let's have a closer look here. Looks like we need to shorten up. And then repeat. Whoops! This is where precise node comes in. So, where are we? We are a little bit now too long. that going the right way? Difficult to tell. So position, we're too early. Let's move ourselves a little bit back to give us a bit more time to do the manoeuvre. There we go. Is that better? That looks much better. But we are now too far. We've overshot. So let's pull back. And repeat. Which way to adjust? That way. There we go. Now this is where Mech Jeb would obviously make things a lot easier, and not having faulty fuel pipes would help as well. So 332, that's not so bad, to be honest. I don't know we're going to do that much better. 348, 307, and like I say, without Mech Jeb to do the actual thrust, we're not going to be doing that accurately. Now we've got 4 hours before this 34-second burn, but before we do that, let us rinse and repeat refueling the tanks. We don't want to run out when refueling the tanks. Refueling the tanks? We don't want to run out of thrust as we did on the first manoeuvre. Now 34 seconds, I think we could probably do that with what's left in the tanks, but let's not risk it. So let's fully refuel. Won't take quite as long now because obviously we've not got that much fuel to drop back into the tanks. Now there are tools to do this. I think Thunder Aerospace does a tool to help with this mechanism. Never used it, but we'll do it manually. We don't have the tool installed. We don't have working fuel pipes, which would help. So there's the last tank ready to roll. So we are now fully refueled, and we have a 34-second burn, so that'll be at about 17 seconds to node. So we will make use of Kerbin alarm clock. We will add a new alarm. It is for the asteroid hunter to the next manoeuvre node with 1 minute's warning. Let's add that alarm. Let's go back to map mode and watch our progress. And let's hit the accelerate button. Let's move precise node out of the way. And let's time warp. You can see down there at the bottom, 4 hours to go. We can see that same time up here on the manoeuvre node. Still have a heck of a long time before we meet any of these other encounters, so it's going to be a while before we could launch to Duna, for example. Wouldn't that be nice? So two and a half hours to go. Let's speed up again. Here we go. Alarm is about to kick in. We can see time warp dropping down. Thank you very much, Kerbin alarm clock, for doing that for me. 50, 10, and then we drop down to 5, and finally we hit the manoeuvre node. So we'll delete this alarm and we'll get ready to manoeuvre. So let's turn ourselves around, get ourselves on node. Here we go. So we're on node now. We have 34-second burn, which we will start on 17. So we're about halfway to go. 30 seconds. 29. Now I suspect we're going to have to do quite a few of these adjustments, but they should get smaller and smaller in the case of delta V, in the terms of delta V we require. So let's accelerate away. So here's our manoeuvre burning away. We can see our orbit coming in now. Let's keep on node as best we can. Keep the orange dot on the blue dot. If only flying real spaceships was this easy. Here we are, coming through. Get ready to kill that engine. Let's slow down, keep on the reticule as best possible. There we go. Let's kill that node. Now, how close did we get? Not bad. 480 odd. That is not that bad. That is not that bad. But we can probably do better. So this is where, again, we rinse and repeat. Let's get rid of the alarm clock for the moment. Let us see what we can do. So we've got 400. And maybe we go back a little. There we go. 219. So we're coming back a little. So let's put our increment, very tiny increment, and let us right-click the prograde and see if that is making it any better or any worse. 214, 205, 202, 199. It's getting, I don't think our 198, not making a great deal of difference. So let's have a look. Where do we think we are? It's very difficult to focus on the maneuver node itself. We look pretty close, to be honest. And a 1.3 meter per second change. That's how efficient these deep space maneuvers can be. I think we need to... I still think... Oh, I don't know. Is it worth it? One asks. Because I very much doubt... Well, let's try it, shall we? Let's just try some random stuff. Now, let us try changing a radial up a little. Now, I think that took it away. 201. 203. 198. 198. Not making a great deal of difference there. 206. That didn't really help at all. So let's bring that back. Now that's probably some tiny number. So let's put that back to 0 manually. So let's now just make a slight adjustment here. 218. I don't think these are making that much difference. So I suggest we just let it rip. And we'll make final adjustments. God blimey, this is so sensitive. That final approach. 233, that's pretty close. So, let's rinse and repeat. Let's get another alarm up. Another maneuver with 1 minute remaining. Let's add that alarm. Use the miracle of time warp. And approach our maneuver node. We can see all our various other satellites whizzing around there. We see the Mun whizzing around here. And here's our ultimate goal, momentous, out here on the left. That's where we're going with this asteroid, but one thing at a time. Down to time warp of 10, 5, and there we go. And let's close that alarm. Now, given how tiny this amount is, and how inaccurate we are, I am tempted simply to set up our direction of transfer. Let's get ourselves on here and just trickle this in and see how close our nodes will get. So we've got 1 meter per second. So let's trickle that in 20 seconds. And then we'll make some last minute adjustments around here. This is getting tense. Let's hope it works after all this. Here we go. So let's just trickle that in. There we go. So 207. That is pretty good. Now, given the last maneuver was barely 1 meter per second, I don't know we're going to be able to make much more accurate a transfer. But let's try. We've got an increment of 0.01. So what if we go up in prograde? 223. Down in prograde? 226. Hardly an effect at all. Up on the normal? 226. Down on the normal? 28. No effect at all. And finally, up on the radial, 228, down on the radial, 226. It's not really making any difference at all. If anything, it's just randomly. Well, since we're not doing too bad here. 219, 216, 207. Well, maybe we can. 0.2 of a meter per second, as if we can even dole that out. 208, 209. We're not really making that much of an improvement. And I don't think I can even dole that out, if that's a phrase. So I think we are going to delete that node and just go for intercept. Now what I will do is I will add a maneuver just so we can add an alarm, because I'm like that. So let's add that alarm. We have 3 days before we will arrive at that node. So let's just watch the sights as we whiz by with Bill, Jeb and Bob. Engage the miracle of time warp as we rush towards that maneuver node. Beautiful. Now we're approaching the maneuver node now, and let's see if we want to make any final adjustments before we go for rendezvous. Let's close that alarm, go back to map mode and just check we haven't drifted off. 231, slightly, but not to be worried. So I think we should now add a final alarm for closest approach to target. Now this will give us a minute's closest approach, but let's just change that to 5 minutes. Add that alarm, which is going to be in 3 hours. So crossing this distance is going to be 3 hours as the asteroid approaches. Now we're going really slow at this point. 53.5 meters per second as we approach apoapsis, but this thing is charging along at 534, so hopefully it will catch us up. So let's find out. Let's accelerate time as we've done before and watch as our target approaches. Here it comes. And here we go. Let's delete that alarm. And we're kind of ready for, well, we are ready to meet our asteroid. Now it's currently closing in at 256,000 meters, 256 kilometers. Now we've kind of gone past it at this point, so we have to be very careful that we don't start going too far away from it. Now there's our apoapsis, so we're going to be starting to speed up. So we're now going to have to start standard maneuvering technique. So let us get prepared to slow ourselves down relative to the target. Now, whilst we are still closing on the target, or rather while it's still closing on us, we will keep ourselves just drifting through space. So let's close our alarm And let's keep an eye on our relative velocity. So you can see our relative velocity there is marked in here. And we can see our distance as here. Now we're still closing in. So we'll allow it to keep moving behind us. (232). Now we're on a substantially different orbit, so we are going to have to correct that. And we'll do that as part of our standard manoeuvring process. Distance is still coming down. Still coming towards us. 225. But I don't want it to start getting ahead of us. Now, while we're waiting, let's make sure our tanks are full. So let's in. Again, it won't take us very long because they're not that empty. Where's the next one? Here. We'll have got through approximately half of our fuel reserve, I think, by the time we complete this manoeuvre. So hopefully half the fuel will be enough to redirect the asteroid itself. That's going to be our next problem after rendezvous. I am rather getting ahead of myself. It's getting quite exciting, actually. So let's fill the final tank. We can see the distance is still coming down, so we're still getting closer. So I don't know that we can even see the marker for it yet. There's Kerbin way down there. So I don't think we'll even be able to see the marker. So let's go back to map mode. Whoops, too far. So there we go. It's coming up behind us, 212. So we're still getting closer, or it's still getting closer to us, but at some point around here it'll start getting ahead of us as we start disappearing out in this direction. So we are going to have to reduce our relative velocity relatively soon. And I think that time is coming because the rate at which it's gaining on us is starting to drop. So let us get ourselves lined up. Now we're going to be running parallel, so we've probably overshot a little. So we're going to then have to come in towards it, back off, come in towards it, back off, just as you would with any docking manoeuvre. The only difference here, I guess, is the target's a little bit bigger, but we have quite a large gap between us, so we are going to have to be careful. Fuel is going to be important, which is why we're using the nuclear engines. So we're pulling ourselves parallel to our target now. The manoeuvre node intersects now aren't really relevant because we are now simply pulling up alongside our target. So 150 meters per second relative speed. And the asteroid hunter, there's the asteroid. 100 meters per second. Let's keep lining ourselves up with the retrograde marker. 50 meters per second. 20. Let's slow ourselves down. There we go. Just gently trickling in the last few meters per second of relative speed. There we go. Oops. We are now slightly moving away. Jeb, get your fingers off the controls. So now we need to move towards our target. And some more... Oh, no, that's away from our target. And some more rinsing and repeating. So how far are we away? There we are, 210. Well, that's not so bad. That's what we anticipated. That's pretty good. Well done, Jeb. You can put your hands back on the controls now. So let's get ourselves lined up with the target. And speed towards the target. There you can see our prograde marker. Now we can pull our prograde marker in for a little bit of extra effect. Relative effect, I guess you'd say. So now we are heading towards our target. As you can see, towards an intersect somewhere along here. So we can see our relative distance is starting to come down. 209. So let's just, because we've got quite a long distance to travel, let's just increase our relative velocity. And then get ready to reduce our relative velocity. And then rinse and repeat. So I think what we'll do, rather than using velocity, i.e. thrust, to bring ourselves closer together, I'm going to use the miracle of time warp. And just accelerate using time, the rate at which we are approaching our target. So we're now up to time warp of 50 and the distance is coming in very nicely. Now that's not drifting away very quickly, which means we are very much on target. Our vector, our approach vector is very good, so I'm very, very, very impressed with Jeb's work. So we're down to 140 kilometers, 130, so we're looking for an approach somewhere in here. 110 kilometers, there we go. Now our vectors are separating slightly as time goes by, so we will need to make an adjustment. Now we're down to 80 kilometers. Here we go. Go to 60 kilometers and 50. Now we go to 35. Now looks like we're drifting significantly away from our vector now, so let's just herd the retrograde marker towards our target retrograde marker so we can reduce our relative velocity to 0. We're getting pretty close there, so let's just make the final adjustments. Very trickle in some final adjustments. I do like to take these things down exactly to 0, or as near as damn it, in order to reduce error when I make the counter adjustment. So we've got 28 kilometers distant. So let's now thrust towards our target again, but this time not at full pelt. So let's reduce it to say 20 meters per second. And here we go with 27 kilometers. So then again, let's use the miracle of time warp to bring ourselves closer together. And we can see our relative velocity to target is now coming down to very small numbers, from our hundreds or even 500 down to almost 0. So 13 kilometers, 12, 10, 9. We're getting very close now. So let's take ourselves out of time warp, go out of map mode, and we just saw in there, where'd it go? We just saw somewhere, I think it might even be in the sun somewhere. Our target. There we go. There we go. There we go. Isn't that beautiful? Target approaching with Kerbin in the background. So we are 6.2 kilometers away. So let's get ready to slow down again. So let's just rotate around. Now we should have plenty of fuel for these last few maneuvers, he says. So let's just herd the retrograde marker in as relative velocity drops. So there we go. Get down relative velocity to 4 meters, 3, 2, 1, 0. Well, near as. 4 meters per second, that's fine. 5.5 kilometers to rendezvous. That very heroic sounding music really works for this. It's quite nerve-wracking, actually. Aren't you glad I'm doing it and not you? So let's just start approaching our target. This time at, let's say, 10, or in this case 11 meters per second. So we can see distance is now dropping. More slowly, but let's use the miracle of time warp again. Here we go, 5.2, 5.1, 5 kilometers, 4.9. Still have plenty of fuel for the rendezvous. Four kilometers, here we go, 4 kilometers. We have a very, very small relative velocity in each of the directions now. We're getting very, very close to the orbit of the asteroid itself. 3.1. It'll soon be in visual range when it gets into 2 kilometers, 2.9, 2.8, 2.7, 2.5, 2.2. Here we go. Can't quite see it yet, but it is in there. So let's just get ourselves ready to slow down for final approach. Herd our retrograde marker in, reducing our relative velocity again, 9 meters per second. Now is not the time for violent maneuvers. Just gently reducing it. 3.1. 1.6. There we go. 1.2 kilometers to go. So let's turn ourselves around. Line ourselves up with our target. We're now getting into millimeters per second relative velocity. That is pretty cool. So let's just accelerate towards our target again at about 1 meter a second. 1,000 seconds. So let's speed up just a little bit. Just a little bit. 2 meters per second. We're within kilometers now. We're in 1.1 kilometers. You can probably just see the asteroid flickering behind the marker if you look very, very closely. So 2 meters per second. Let's use the miracle of time warp. only times 5 now, because we are getting very, very close. 1 kilometre now. We are within 1 kilometre, and the shape can just be seen of our target asteroid. 900 metres. And I must say so, for a manual approach without any MET-JEB, this has been pretty good. You might think otherwise, and if you do, tell me what I did wrong in the comments, because I would love to know, because this is nerve-wracking. And if there's a way not to make it nerve-wracking, all the better. 600 metres, so let's slow down time again, and let's creep forward. Or in this case, creep backwards, because we're just going to go over to the retrograde marker, take off our 2 meters per second. You can see even the rotation of the vehicle now is adding a meter a second, or a fraction of a meter a second, to our speed. So 1.6, let's just drop it down to 0. Here we go, 0.3, that's close enough. You can definitely see the shape of our asteroid now as we approach. Let's just get ourselves on our target marker, the pink circle, and just bring ourselves forward again. $559. Time warp our way in again. Half a meter a second approach speed. $480. I was going to say, can we see, is this the Mun here? Just about make it out in the darkness as we approach 420 meters. $370. 350. 320. Now we're slightly slipping underneath, so let's reduce time warp. And just repeat our approach maneuver. Meters per second, or 0.2 I should say, and our total relative velocity, as you can see here, is now negligible. It's millimeters per second, but we are still gaining just very, very slightly at 1 meter a second. Bob's not so sure we're doing very well. Okay, Bob, well, let's prove you wrong. So let's just approach again at 0.6. Now, the asteroid is going in this direction. So in order to slow it down, we need to dock with the asteroid in this top corner. So we are going to have to maneuver when we arrive. Now we could just use brute force and ignorance and use our reaction wheel and our RCS to pull ourselves around, or we could just dock on the right side. So let's just use time warp to bring ourselves in again. We're coming straight towards it now at very, very low millimeters per second, 6.6 of a meter per second. So we'll get into our usual 100-meter range, and then we will call it a stop, because obviously it's much larger than our usual vehicles we dock with, so we're going to need a little space to work with. So there we go, 110. Let's get ourselves rotated round. and get ready to come to a full stop. Let's just reduce our speed. There we go. Fantastic. So we need to dock. The time has come. Yes, Jeb, the time has come. Let us maneuver and dock somewhere on this edge. So let's go to our docking position. Let's just go into rotate mode because we're going to have to rotate ourselves around. So let's just turn ourselves around. So we want to be facing, which way? We want to be facing kind of, no, not that way. Not that way. We'll get there in the end. Sort of kind of this way. Something sort of possibly bit like that. That's kind of the direction that we want to be docking in. So let's go to linear mode. Let's go to chase cam. And let us position ourselves. Where's the sun? The sun's up there. So let's at least get ourselves backing onto the sun. Then our panels will be a little better lit up. So let's get rid of all of these panels and let's just move over. So let's go not rotating, let's get back into linear mode, and you can if we come in here you can see which way the thrusters are thrusting. So that's back and this will be left. There's a left in space. There we go. So we should be backed onto the sun somewhere, so we need to rotate up a little. I think we need to come into that lit side, I think. So let's just rotate ourselves down a bit. Chase mode's not that handy for rotation. Very good for lateral translation, but not necessarily for rotation. There we go. So let's go back into linear mode. We're going to be coming in on this lit side so that our panels are well lit. Jeb is now well in control. We should be clear. We need to come up. See the jets, the way the jets are firing. Help you navigate in this mode. So we're well below. So let's bring ourselves up and we'll see if we can attach ourselves somewhere in here, this sort of flat, well lit surface here. So we'll bring ourselves up 70 meters, or 75 meters, 73, 72. Coming to 70 meters. We're moving a little bit away, so let's go forward a little. There we go. .61 meters. 0.6 to our target. That's a pretty good velocity to be approaching your target. 55 meters. Can I see momentous there? Just about to be, is it occluded by the asteroid? Just in there. There we go. Just there. So 44 meters. So we drift across the face of our asteroid. 38 meters. So close. Yet so close. 34 meters. You can just now see our target coming in here on the nav ball. Now I think we need to start reducing our vertical velocity because we're nicely lined up now. start getting ready to reduce our lateral velocity. Now, I haven't forgotten, we do need to arm our grabber. Arm our grabber. So we have now armed our grabber. Let us slow down. There we go. We're still drifting up a little. So let's come down. And we're now drifting away a little. So let's get some forward velocity in. Now that we're all lined up. And there you can see our prograde marker. Come down a little. Get ourselves all lined up. Here we are. You can just see our shadow now, so we are well positioned to get some sunlight. Let's get some bright lights on our target. See exactly the surface we are going to be engaging in. I think we're close enough now to accelerate away and grab our asteroid. Contact. Fantastic! Well done, Jeb. Excellent. We have grabbed an asteroid. And as you saw flash up in this corner, it meets our contract's requirements. Brilliant. Brilliant. Let's turn our lights off. We don't need our lights on. We don't need to see our... Come on, off you go. There we go. We don't need to see our resources. We just need to see some very happy campers. Brilliant. That went surprisingly well. Surprisingly well. Let's take a postcard for all those back at KSC who will want to see how successful our mission has been. Can't really get one with the sun. Far too bright. But I think that one with Kerbin in the background will do us proud. Well, with that part of our manoeuvre complete, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.